Not the funeral director. Not the minister standing quietly by the casket. Not even my sister Patricia, who had flown in from Seattle and was clutching my arm like I might collapse. No one moved when my daughter-in-law stepped in front of me and said those words. "You should sit in the back, Eleanor. The front row is for immediate family." I had been married to Harold for 43 years. I had held his hand when the doctor said the word terminal. I had slept in a hospital chair for 9 nights straight, watching monitors beep and fade. I had kissed his forehead when he took his last breath at 4:17 inches the morning, while our sons were home sleeping. And now Vanessa, my eldest son's wife of 6 years, was telling me I wasn't immediate family. I looked at her. She was wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her blonde hair, perfectly styled, her expression arranged into something that was supposed to look sympathetic, but didn't quite make it. Behind her stood my son Bradley, 41 years old, the boy I had nursed through chickenpox and pneumonia, the boy whose science fair projects I had stayed up until midnight helping with, the boy who had cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke up with him. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, looking at the floor. "Bradley," I said quietly, "what is this?" He finally looked up, but he couldn't meet my eyes. "Mom, maybe you should it's complicated. We'll talk about it after the service." Complicated? Patricia's grip tightened on my arm. Harold was her husband. What's complicated about that? That's when my younger son Derek walked over. 38. Always the more direct one. He had his father's square jaw, and unfortunately, I was starting to realize his father's brother's temperament. Uncle Richard had always been the difficult one in the family. "Mom, we need to discuss some things about the estate," Derek said, keeping his voice low so the other mourners wouldn't hear. "Dad made some changes. Recent changes. You're not going to like what you hear. So maybe it's better if you're not sitting right there when they read the will later." Something cold settled in my stomach. Not shock, not really. I had watched my sons change over the past few years. Ever since Harold's construction company had grown from a small local operation into something worth real money. I had seen how their eyes lit up differently when they visited, how their questions had shifted from, "How are you feeling, Dad?" to, "How's the business doing, Dad?" But I never thought it would come to this. Not at his funeral. Not with his body lying 10 feet away. "I'm going to sit in the front row," I said, surprised by how steady my voice was. "I'm going to say goodbye to my husband. And whatever conversation you want to have about the estate can happen later, at the attorney's office. Like civilized people." Vanessa opened her mouth to protest, but something in my face must have stopped her. Maybe it was the same look I gave Bradley when he was 16 and tried to sneak out past curfew. Whatever it was, she stepped aside. I walked to the front row. I sat down. I looked at Harold's casket, covered in white lilies because they were his favorite, and I thought about the folder sitting in my handbag, the folder I had hoped I would never need to open. Let me tell you about Harold and me. We met in 1981 at a hardware store in Columbus, Ohio. I was 22, working as a secretary at an insurance company, and I had gone in to buy a new doorknob for my apartment. Harold was 25, just starting out with a truck and a toolbox and dreams of building something bigger. He saw me struggling to figure out which doorknob would fit my door and offered to help. 3 hours later, we were still talking in the parking lot. 6 months later, we were married. Those first years were lean. Harold worked 14-hour days while I kept the books, answered the phone, and made sandwiches for his crew. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that got cold in winter and hot in summer. When Bradley was born in 1984, we converted a closet into a nursery, but Harold had vision. More than that, he had integrity. He did quality work for fair prices. He treated his workers well, and he never cut corners. Word spread. By the time Derek came along in 1987, we had bought our first house. By 1995, Harold had 20 employees. By 2005, he had 50. Harper and Sons Construction became one of the most respected firms in central Ohio. Shopping centers, medical buildings, school renovations. Harold built them all. And yes, there was money. More money than either of us had ever imagined when we were sharing that tiny apartment and counting pennies for groceries. But Harold never forgot where he came from. Neither did I. I wish I could say the same for our sons. Bradley was always the charming one. Good grades, popular in school, knew how to work a room. He went to Ohio State, got a business degree, and Harold brought him into the company right after graduation. By his 30s, Bradley was vice president of operations, with a corner office and an expense account. That's when he met Vanessa. She was a marketing consultant, brought in to help with the company's rebranding. Beautiful, sophisticated, ambitious. I tried to like her. I really did. But there was always something calculating behind her smile, a way of assessing everything and everyone in terms of what they could do for her. They married in 2019, a wedding that cost more than our first house. Harold paid for it without complaint. She makes Bradley happy, he said. That's what matters. Derek took a different path. He went to law school, became a corporate attorney, then shifted to estate planning. He married young, divorced young, and never had children. He was always a little jealous of Bradley's position in the company, a little resentful that he had chosen a different career. "I'm the one with the legal expertise," he would say. "I should be more involved in the business decisions." Harold tried to include him when he could, but Derek's bitterness seemed to grow every year. Then, in 2023, Harold was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him 18 months. He made it 14. Those 14 months changed everything. They revealed things I had suspected but never wanted to believe. Bradley visited once a week at first, then once every 2 weeks, then only when Vanessa could fit it into their social schedule. Derek came more often, but his visits always seemed to have an agenda. He would sit by Harold's bed with legal documents, talking about trusts and transfers and tax implications. "Just sign here, Dad. It's for estate planning purposes." Harold was tired. He was in pain. The medications made it hard to focus. I started sitting in on those conversations. I started asking questions. Derek didn't like that. "Mom, this is complicated legal stuff. You don't need to worry about it. My husband is signing legal documents. I think I need to understand what he's signing." That's when Derek's tone changed. That's when I saw something in his eyes that frightened me, a coldness that reminded me of predators circling wounded prey. I called Margaret Chen the next day. Margaret had been our family attorney for 20 years, a tiny woman with steel gray hair and a mind like a razor. She had helped us with everything, from the original business incorporation to our first wills. "I'm worried," I told her. "Derek keeps bringing papers for Harold to sign, and Harold is on so much medication." Margaret was at our house within 2 hours. She reviewed the documents Derek had left. Her face grew very still. "Eleanor, did Harold sign any of these?" "I don't know. Maybe. Derek was here when I was at the pharmacy yesterday." Margaret closed the folder. "We need to talk. Without Derek, without Bradley. Just you, me, and Harold. On one of his better days." It took a week to find a day when Harold was clear-headed enough. The cancer was aggressive, and the lucid periods were getting shorter. But on a Tuesday afternoon in late August, Harold was himself again, sharp, aware, present. Margaret explained what she had found. Derek had been slowly restructuring Harold's estate, shifting assets, modifying beneficiaries. If all the documents he had prepared were signed, the company would go entirely to Bradley and Derek upon Harold's death. The house, the investments, everything Harold and I had built together would be divided between our sons, with minimal provisions for me. "He's my son," Harold said, his voice cracking. "How could he do this?" "Greed does strange things to people," Margaret said gently. "But here's the important thing, Harold. You haven't signed everything. The key documents still have your original wishes, and you still have the mental capacity, right now, to make your intentions absolutely clear. That afternoon, with Margaret as witness and a video recording for legal protection, Harold restated his wishes. The original estate plan he and I had created together would stand. I would inherit the house, a majority stake in the company, and full control over the family trust. Our sons would receive their planned inheritances, but not until they turned 50, and only if they hadn't contested the will. "I love my boys," Harold said into the camera, his eyes wet. "I love them more than they'll ever know, but I won't let them steal from their mother. Eleanor stood by me for 43 years. She built this life with me, brick by brick. She deserves every protection I can give her." He signed the new documents. Margaret notarized them. We made copies, stored in 3 separate locations. Then Harold did something else. He gave me the folder. "Keep this safe," he said. "I hope you never need it. But if the boys try anything after I'm gone, if they try to push you aside or take what's yours, you open this folder. You show them who their father really was and what he really wanted." Harold died 11 weeks later. I was holding his hand. Our sons were not there. Now here I was, sitting in the front row of his funeral, with Vanessa's words still echoing in my ears and the folder heavy in my handbag. The service was beautiful. The minister spoke about Harold's integrity, his generosity, his commitment to his community. Former employees stood up and shared stories. One man, Roberto, who had started as a laborer and risen to project manager, cried openly as he talked about how Harold had paid for his daughter's college education. "He was like a father to me," Roberto said. "Better than my own father ever was." I looked at Bradley and Derek. They were sitting 3 seats away from me, a gap that Vanessa had insisted on. Neither of them looked moved by Roberto's words. Bradley was checking his phone under his jacket. Derek was whispering something to the attorney he had brought. A man I didn't recognize, a man who definitely wasn't Margaret Chen. After the burial, the guests came back to our house for the reception. My house, the home Harold and I had bought in 1992, where we had raised our boys, where we had celebrated anniversaries and weathered storms and grown old together. Vanessa was acting like she owned the place. She was directing the caterers, rearranging the furniture, telling people where to sit. "The reading of the will is scheduled for tomorrow at 2, Derek announced to me, as if I were just another guest. At my office. "I've arranged for everything to be handled efficiently. Margaret Chen has always handled our legal affairs," I said. Derek's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Things change, Mom. Dad wanted to simplify the process. He asked me to handle the estate." "Did he?" "We have documentation. You'll see tomorrow." I saw Patricia across the room, her face tight with barely contained fury. She started walking toward us, ready to say something, but I caught her eye and shook my head slightly. "Not here. Not now." That night, after everyone had left, I sat alone in the living room where Harold and I had spent so many evenings. His chair was empty. It would always be empty. I opened the folder. Inside were the documents Margaret and I had prepared. Harold's video testimony on a USB drive, copies of the fraudulent papers Derek had tried to get signed, records showing which ones Harold had signed under duress or confusion, now legally invalidated, a letter from Harold, handwritten, sealed in an envelope addressed to our sons. And there was something else. Bank records, emails, evidence that Bradley and Derek had been conspiring for over a year. They had been planning to push me out long before Harold got sick. The cancer just accelerated their timeline. I read through everything. I cried. I raged. I prayed. Then I closed the folder and waited for tomorrow. Derek's office was on the 15th floor of a glass tower downtown, very different from Margaret Chen's modest practice in a converted Victorian house. Very Derek. I arrived 15 minutes early. Patricia insisted on coming with me. "You're not facing those vultures alone," she said. We were directed to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a long mahogany table. Derek was already there, along with his attorney, a man named Philip Stone who looked like he charged $500 an hour just to shake hands. Bradley and Vanessa arrived together. Vanessa was carrying a designer bag that probably cost more than my car. She didn't look at me. "Let's get started," Derek said, taking the head of the table. "I know this is difficult, but we should handle Dad's affairs as quickly as possible." "Where's Margaret Chen?" I asked. "As I explained yesterday, Mom, I'm handling the estate now. Margaret's services are no longer needed." "I see." Derek nodded to Philip Stone, who opened a leather portfolio and began reading. The document he read was not the will Harold and I had created together. It was not the will Harold had reaffirmed with Margaret Chen in August. It was something else entirely. Something that left the company to Bradley and Derek in equal shares, gave me a small monthly allowance from a limited trust, and allowed me to remain in the house only at the discretion of the primary beneficiaries. At the discretion of my own sons. In my own home. Vanessa was smiling. Bradley was studying the table surface. Derek was watching me, waiting for my reaction. "This isn't right," Patricia said. "Eleanor, this isn't what Harold wanted." "Mrs. Patterson," Philip Stone said smoothly, "I understand this may be surprising, but Mr. Harper made significant updates to his estate plan in his final months. These documents are properly executed and witnessed." "When?" I asked. "Excuse me? When were these documents signed?" Stone consulted his notes. "September 14th of last year." September 14th. The day I had been at my sister's house in Seattle, dealing with her medical emergency. The day Harold had been alone with Derek for 8 hours. Harold had still been relatively lucid in September, but confused, tired, trusting his own son. "Dad knew what he was signing," Derek said. "He wanted to ensure the company stayed in capable hands. He wanted to protect his legacy." "By leaving your mother homeless?" "You're not homeless, Mom. You can stay in the house. We're not monsters. At your discretion. Like a tenant, in the home I've lived in for 33 years. Derek shrugged. "It's what Dad wanted." I looked at my sons. These men I had raised, fed, clothed, loved. These men who had come from my body and grown up in my arms. These men who were now stealing from me with paperwork and legal jargon, using their father's illness as a weapon. Bradley still wouldn't meet my eyes. Derek was watching me with something like triumph. Vanessa was already mentally redecorating my living room. I opened my handbag and took out the folder. "What's that?" Derek asked, his voice suddenly sharp. "Something your father gave me." I opened the folder and laid the documents on the table, one by one. First, the notarized will from August, signed 2 weeks before Derek's fraudulent version, clearly invalidating any subsequent changes made while Harold was medically incapacitated. Second, the video testimony, which I played on my phone and set on the table. Harold's voice filled the room, weak but absolutely clear. "I, Harold James Harper, being of sound mind, declare that any documents signed after this date regarding my estate are to be considered invalid. My sons have been attempting to manipulate my wishes while I am ill. This is my true will and testament." Third, the medical records showing Harold's cognitive state on September 14th, the day Derek claimed he had willingly signed new documents. The records showed he had been on a morphine drip. His doctor had noted significant confusion and disorientation. Fourth, the evidence of conspiracy. The emails between Bradley and Derek, planning their strategy. The bank records showing premature transfers. The text messages where Derek joked about how easy it would be to manage their mother once Dad was gone. The room was silent. Derek's face had gone white. Bradley looked like he was going to be sick. Vanessa had stopped smiling. Philip Stone was reading through the documents with growing horror, realizing that he had been handed a file full of fraud and had just read it aloud in front of witnesses. "Your father loved you," I said, my voice steady. "He loved you so much it broke his heart to do this. He wanted to believe you would do the right thing. He hoped he was wrong about what he was seeing, but he wasn't wrong, and he made sure I would be protected." I looked at Derek. "This is elder abuse. financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, forgery, fraud. Margaret Chen has already provided copies of everything to the district attorney's office. You have 48 hours to withdraw your false claims before criminal charges are filed. Mom, wait! Derek's voice had changed completely. The arrogance was gone. We can talk about this. It's a misunderstanding. I was just trying to protect the company. You were trying to steal from your father while he was dying. You were trying to steal from your mother while she was grieving. That's not a misunderstanding. That's who you are. I turned to Bradley. My firstborn, the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them flowers. Did you know? I asked. All of it? He finally looked at me. There were tears in his eyes. Mom, Vanessa said. Derek said it was just about protecting the business. That you wouldn't know how to run things. That we were helping you by taking the burden off your shoulders. I didn't think about it like that. You didn't think. Your father was dying. Your mother was exhausted. And you didn't think. I'm sorry. His voice broke. I'm so sorry. Vanessa put her hand on his arm. Bradley, don't say anything else. We should call our attorney. Bradley shook off her hand. Something shifted in his face. Something I hadn't seen in years. No, he said. No more attorneys. No more strategies. No more treating my mother like an obstacle. He looked at me. What do you want me to do, Mom? Tell me what to do and I'll do it. I want you to remember who raised you. I want you to think about the kind of man your father was and decide if that's the kind of man you want to be. I want you to earn back my trust, which is going to take a very long time. And I want you to understand that your choices have consequences. I stood up and gathered my documents. Margaret Chen will be in touch. The real will stands. The company will be managed according to your father's wishes, which means I have controlling interest until I decide otherwise. You both have your inheritances, held in trust until you're 50, as your father intended. But there's a clause, one Harold added himself. I looked at Derek. Any beneficiary who contests this will or engages in financial exploitation forfeits their entire inheritance. It goes to charity instead. The Roberto Martinez Scholarship Fund for Children of Construction Workers. Derek's face twisted. You can't do this. I'm not doing anything. Your father did it. 11 weeks before he died, with full mental capacity, because he knew exactly what kind of sons he had raised. I walked to the door, then turned back. The 48 hours start now. Bradley, if you want to talk, you know where I live. Derek, I suggest you find a good criminal defense attorney. The one you have doesn't seem up to the task. Patricia followed me out. In the elevator, she grabbed my hand and squeezed. Harold would be so proud of you. I thought about Harold, about the life we built, about the sons we raised, about how things had gone so wrong. I know, I said. That's what breaks my heart. 3 months have passed. Derek withdrew his claims within 24 hours. He wasn't prosecuted, but only because I asked the DA to hold off. I told him I didn't want to destroy my son. I just wanted him to stop trying to destroy me. He hasn't spoken to me since. He sends his child support payments for the trust and nothing else. No calls on my birthday. No appearance at Thanksgiving. The seat that was always his at our family table sits empty now. I grieve for him. Not for the man he became, but for the boy he used to be. I keep a photo on my dresser of Derek at 8 years old, holding a fish he caught at the lake, grinning so wide you could see his missing teeth. I don't know when that boy disappeared. I don't know if he'll ever come back. Bradley is trying. He calls every Sunday. He comes for dinner every other week. He started therapy, he told me. He's looking at who he became and who he wants to be. I was so focused on success, he said last week, sitting in his father's chair because I asked him to. On money, on status, on what Vanessa wanted, I forgot what actually matters. He and Vanessa are separated. I don't know if they'll divorce. I don't know if I want them to. That's not my decision to make. What I know is this. My son is waking up. Slowly, painfully, but he's waking up. And I'll be here when he's ready. The company is doing well. I hired Roberto Martinez as interim CEO while I learned the business I helped build from the ground up. He cried when I offered him the position. Mrs. Harper, I don't know what to say. Say you'll make Harold proud. Say you'll treat the workers like family. Say you'll never forget where you came from. I promise. All of it. I believe him. Harold would too. The house is quiet these days. I still sleep on my side of the bed. I still put out 2 coffee cups in the morning before I remember. I still hear Harold's voice sometimes, calling from the garage, asking if I want to go for a drive. But I'm not alone. Patricia visits often. Friends from church stop by. The women from my book club have made it their mission to keep me fed and busy. And sometimes, on Sunday evenings, Bradley sits in the living room with me and we watch old home movies. Harold teaching the boys to ride bikes. Christmas mornings with wrapping paper everywhere. Birthday parties with too much cake and not enough napkins. I forgot how happy we were, Bradley said recently, watching his 8-year-old self chase his brother through a sprinkler. We can be happy again, I told him. Different. Sadder. But happy. He reached over and held my hand. The same hand that used to hold mine when he was scared of thunder. I love you, Mom. I love you too. I always have. I always will. That's the thing about being a mother. The love doesn't stop, even when it probably should. Even when your children break your heart. Even when they betray you at your husband's funeral and try to steal everything you spent your life building. The love stays. It just changes shape. It gets boundaries. It learns to protect itself. Harold knew that. That's why he gave me the folder. Not as a weapon. As a shield. A way to protect myself without losing my capacity to love. A way to say, this far and no further. A way to honor what we built without letting anyone tear it down. I keep the folder in my nightstand now, next to Harold's watch and our wedding photo. I hope I never need to open it again, but if I do, I'll be ready. That's what 43 years of marriage taught me. That's what losing Harold taught me. That's what almost losing everything taught me. You can be soft and strong at the same time. You can love someone and hold them accountable. You can grieve what was and still build what's next. The light is changing outside my window. Soon it will be evening. Soon Bradley will call for our Sunday chat. And tomorrow, I'll go into the office and learn a little more about the company Harold and I built together, brick by brick, dream by dream. He's gone. But the life we made is still here. And so am I. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you have children who are circling, waiting, calculating, let me tell you something. Protect yourself. Get your documents in order. Talk to an attorney you trust, not one your children recommend. Make your wishes clear, in writing, on video, witnessed and notarized. Do it while you're healthy. Do it while you're strong. Don't wait until you're vulnerable. Because blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Marriage doesn't guarantee loyalty. Only character does. And you can't control anyone's character except your own. I loved my sons without limits. I gave them everything I had. And when they tried to take even more, I finally learned to say no. That no was the most loving thing I ever did. For them, for me, for Harold's memory. The folder is closed. But my story isn't over. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you to call your mother or check your own legal documents, then something good came from all this pain. And that's all any of us can hope for. Something good from the pain. Something real from the loss. Something beautiful from the broken pieces. Harold used to say that every building starts with a foundation. If the foundation is strong, the building can weather any storm. Our foundation was strong. 43 years of love and partnership and building something together. And even though the storm came, even though the wolves were at the door, the foundation held. It's still holding. And I'm still standing.